I'm Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights in Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. I have no idea how already you guys found this, because I was just telling Andrew, I should have, well, you know what? I never took you off stage. It's been a crazy day. So I was keeping people in the background so I could do the introduction, but we're skipped all that now. That is a way for you to let me not talk as much, because I have a horrible habit of that. And it's kind of my favorite world right now. What I love doing. Oh shit! All 10 of them dropped off. Okay, we'll get him back on. I'll be quiet. I promise. Anyway, Andrew has got a product, a identity that he's really, that I'm really interested in. It's very interesting and exciting, because, as you know, we work with in this conversations of the middle class, we work with all subjects that benefit the great middle class. The elites have, this kind of access to so much more stuff that most people have. So with that, I'm going to just talk about the earth, the healing power of the earth, the connection to the earth. And I want to ask him about walking barefoot in the grass. And I want to ask him about thunderstorms, lightning, because there's a couple of things that I've always found curious there. So with that, Andrew, I think I kind of messed up the intro on you, and so you're going to have to make it up for me, man. You gotta put all the stuff to keep people here. Anyway.
All right. So I'd like to introduce myself, if that's okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to introduce myself in the language of my ancestors. It's a language called Inde Baza, and it just basically means the people's tongue. So Dagote She Inde, Yate She Dene, Andrew Ecker Yin She, Adona E Nishinigi E Inde Nishe, Irish Bashachin, Inde Dashashe, German Dashanali, Akote Goe Itashli E, Portland, Oregon Inasha, Shama E Kathy Lindsey Woye, Shiza E Del Ecker Wole. So my name is Andrew Ecker, my mother Kathy Lindsey, my father Dale Ecker. My mother's mother, Elva Gallegos, Apache woman from New Mexico. She grew up in a little town called Capitan, right outside the Mescalero Reservation, place my mom was raised as well.
Wow.
Although my ancestral lines go back to the Madera Valley of Texas and Chihuahua, Mexico. The Apaches from this area are called La Pond Band Apache. My father's mother, Evelyn Beatty, an Irish woman from Pennsylvania. She's a daughter of the Revolution. She was very proud that our grandfather, William Beatty, fought in the Revolutionary War to establish this country. My mother's father, Leroy Lindsey, a Korean and Vietnam War veteran. And my father's father, Wayne Ecker, a World War II veteran. I have a daughter, Bailey. I have a son, Peyton. I have a beloved fiance named Monica. I was born in the ancestral land of the Multnomah, Clackamas, and Willamette in Portland, Oregon, although I currently reside here in the ancestral land of the Akmel O'odham, the Peepash, and the Hohokam in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm grateful to be here with you, and thank you for an opportunity to share a little bit with your audience about self-identity, ceremonial introduction, and relational spirituality. I also do a lot of work with the drum. I've been facilitating an evidence-based wellness intervention that I call drumming sounds for about 15 years now, working primarily in institutional healthcare, everything from memory care, skilled nursing, psychiatric lockdowns, drug and alcohol treatment facilities. Have facilitated about 5,000 wellness-based programs across the board.
5,000 programs? Programs?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I took that as wow. That's epic. I mean, that's a big. I mean, I don't know what other word to use for it. That's a lot. There's a lot of organization, time,
a massive amount of work.
Yeah.
So 2019, right before the shutdown, we facilitated 587 wellness-based events, and we've been doing that, just massive amount of work.
Man.
So I have a lot of experience working in healthcare, working with individuals that are nonverbal, and I've also trained about 350 people in the modality that I've developed, which is based on post-colonial New Orleans and a place with Choctaw and Chickasaw called Bulbacha. In the Choctaw and Chickasaw language, this means the place of many tongues. So it was the first time in recorded history that Native Americans, Africans, Europeans, and people from all over the world gathered together to create a common language of improvisational drumming. That common language of improvisational drumming created a foundation for the greatest gifts North America's given to the world musically. Jazz, blues, R&B, gospel, country, and rock and roll all have influences coming from that unique group of diverse people alchemizing a language of drumming.
I'll take it a step further too, because absolutely correct. Not only though is it the influence of those musical entities, those musical categories, it's the bass. I mean, literally, the drum beat is what registers, or not, which is what the song, the rhythm is all about. I mean, some of the most powerful songs have that beat is part of it. It's not just influencing, it's literally part of it. And I want to go back after you're finished here. I want to go back and talk to you about the language that that you introduced yourself in, and dig a little bit of in there too. Okay.
Yeah, so this language is a language that's spoke from Alaska to Louisiana and as far south as Mexico. So the scientists call this language Athabascan.
Right.
But it's really Dene Baza or Inde Baza. The name of my ancestors, the Apache, are called Inde, which is basically Dene with a different accent. So we all have a colloquial language that's very regionally defined. And myself, I didn't grow up with my language. I grew up being taught I was Apache, but I didn't know what that really meant. Both of my parents died of drug-related causes. My mom from a cocaine overdose, and my father from cirrhosis of the liver caused by hepatitis C. So both of them were intravenous drug users, and I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of chaos, a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, and mental illness. And myself, I went down that path, but fortunately I had a spiritual awakening when I was serving time in federal prison. And because of that spiritual awakening, I desired to live a better life. And I started trying to figure out what it means to be Apache. And as a part of that, I started participating in sweat lodge ceremonies. I started going to what we call a Sundance ceremonies. And I got to hear elders introduce themselves. And I thought, what does that mean? We grew up in a culture that kind of values behavior. Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. And that seems to be the foundation for self-identity. In fact, you don't have value unless you have something that you can offer the institution. And when we think about the innate value of a human being, there's something very powerful in that. And indigenous communities and earth-based communities throughout the world celebrated the idea of people being children, being grandchildren, and being from someplace and living someplace. These are kind of the principles of self-identity that I bring forward in my book, The Sacred Seven. And it's important to realize, how did we get to this place where we can have intimate relationships with friends and even lovers and never know the name of their grandparents? We don't know the maiden name of their grandmothers. We don't know the maiden name of their, their family. We don't even know their place of birth. And that's a sad state that we have created and allowed ourselves to erase these value systems that have created functional human beings since the dawn of cultural identity. I mean, I'm Irish on my dad's side, and there was a time in Ireland where the people would introduce themselves from their maternal and their paternal lines and their connection to the land. This was a part of the earth-based identity within Europe as well, and yet it was erased during feudalism and manneralism, which were these two kind of ideologies that created only a small group of people. An elite group of people could have an earth-based identity. And those elites, they were the ones that were able to introduce themselves as the mountains. They were able to introduce themselves as the rivers. They were able to introduce themselves as the valleys. And everybody else was a job. And this is why we have the smith, the parson, the knight, the sower. Everyone has a job-based name. And it's because inherently within the earth-based wisdom, there is a value for you. You know, within Europe, for hundreds of years, if your dad was a smith, you were a smith. You know, that was the lineage that you had to do. And, you know, it goes back to really warfare. And if I was the king of the South and you were the king of the West, I want to borrow money to go.
I don't believe, I think your sound fell off there. Hope it's not me.
I would take my ledger with my lands and with my knights, smiths, parsons, sowers, farmers. I would take that ledger to you and I would say, here's my land, but here's my people that I'm going to borrow money against. I was going to borrow money against the value of the people in my district. Now we've changed this and we've created social security numbers, but it's the same system. It's the same exact system of eradicating the earth-based identity from the majority of people, eradicating the inherent value as being connected to the earth, and creating illusion of separation from our planet. And that illusion of separation from our planet has created an imbalance in our families. It's created an imbalance in our communities, and it's created a destructive force that is still a part of our communities. And that's why it's my mission to give people the tools to teach their children how to introduce themselves, because the value of your daughter one day sitting around the fire of your home place and that fire burning in her eyes and her introducing herself as you is a value that everyone needs to experience. Everyone in this world needs to experience the beauty of being honored ceremonially in a spiritual, powerful way. And as we awaken to rebuilding that, we can have the authority and sovereignty that it takes to establish ourselves as earthlings, as members of the earth. And that sovereignty is a powerful positioning when it comes to navigating the destructive forces of the illusion that many of us are under right now.
When you say it, well, man, there's a lot to unpack there. I should have taken notes because there's some amazing stuff going on with your path and your mission, and how you got there. The earth, we're just getting into this. We talked about it before, and I mentioned about some things that we talk about as far as the energy, or more likely the frequency of the earth, and we're talking about Sedona and some things that I'm really fascinated about at that place. So what is the well, actually, let me back up here. I'm going to pop off here. John Morris.
Well, I want to step in for a second and give you a little bit of understanding of what you're talking about, because you're touching on some really powerful topics that I feel are a part of creating a relationship with the earth. So yeah, is there a frequency that happens when we connect to the earth barefoot? Yes. Is there a frequency that happens when we drum? Yes. Is there a frequency that happens when we dance and we pray together? Yes. And this frequency creates an epigenetic response that unlocks inherent wisdom and superpowers in our relational spirituality. We connect in a way that gives us the ability.
Lost you again.
Are you there?
Yep.
Are you there?
I'm here. Yes.
It gives us an ability to understand that the mountain is our relative, that the river is our relative, that all of this that we experience, the trees are our relatives. When we live in that frequency, there is a knowledge that will allow us to understand ourselves, our family, our community, and the next 7 generations, our ancestry. All of those things begin to get unlocked. And what you're touching on is skimming the surface of it. See, there's a lot of scientific blah, blah, blah.
Let me jump in real quick, because one of the things I want to ask, to add to what you're going through, because this is amazing stuff. This is important stuff. Why do you think today? And I remember, if you were Smith, your ancestors came from that work, as you talked about. Baker. I mean, you can go on and on about them. I hope to think that isn't mine, because my last name is Duff. So does that mean I've been an ass my whole life, or
what is your last name?
Duff, Duff.
Well, you know what? I'm sure that there was something associated with that. I don't know exactly. But if you looked at the old European language, there was probably something that was, maybe it was the chaff. Maybe your ancestors were removing the chaff from the wheat. I don't know. Have you looked into it?
No, I haven't. However, I do know that it started out McDuff. When generations ago we came over from the on the boat. Not we, they did. But anyway, that's amazing. But why do you think you say we've gone away from that? We've gone to this, obviously the Social Security numbers are a whole nother thing as well. But, we always honor our ancestors, meaning I love my grandparents, and they are all part of me, and things they've done is what family discussions are always about. We remember the days kind of thing. And it's kind of a special family, not ritual, but family interaction. Why do you think we did move away from that?
I think that it was forced servitude. It wasn't, people when they came to the United States, they were completely liberated because they didn't have to follow that system, the feudal system, the manneralism, like these systems where you were only granted lands by the authority of the king and the queen. This was like a whole new world for them. Now, the idea of that system still being a part of the United States as we grow into this kind of evolution, it has grown into that space. No longer are you able to create a homestead or live in some kind of relationship with the planet. Although, indigenous communities here for tens of thousands of years lived in that way of honoring this connectivity to the earth and the connectivity to the family and the community. Within the introduction process of my ancestors is not only a connection to the earth, but there's also a very powerful social structure of responsibility. For instance, my sister's children are my children within that system. And there's a way of understanding an uncle as a little dad. And these are in very, very important parts of the communal understanding of how we relate to ourselves inside of the system of the community. Did I lose you?
No, you didn't at all. I was trying to get over here and read some of this stuff, some of the emails, but I tried to unplug it. So anyway, I messed up my sound. I told you it's been just a bizarre day. Literally had to redo the link before you came in. Thank goodness you picked up on that and hit it right away, because I was like, it happened like 5 minutes, 10 minutes before.
Well, I stumbled through it. I just had to do my best to adapt, and
hey, it worked out. Exactly. Hey, what do you think on some of these questions? I've got like I'm 15, 20 behind here. Let's knock off a couple of these guys to kind of interweave. I wanted to go back to a couple things. Here. Okay, so first of all, Adam, he loves the work you're doing. It's very inspiring. It's
awesome.
Always good. It's always good to get feedback there. And then he also then asks, how did drumming become a central part of your healing work? And I think those are things we're going to be getting into, correct?
I think that's a great question. And so, growing up in the environment that I grew up in, there's a lot of chaos. I mean, I went through a no-knock warrant when I was a kid. My parents weren't really, like what you would call violent criminals. They were a part of a subculture within the addict culture of boosting. And this is people who lift professionally.
Gotcha.
So as a kid, I was used to shoplift with my mom, and by the time I was a teenager, I was using heroin with my dad. I mean, it was just a part of the air that I breathed when I was a kid. Yeah. And, I remember growing up in the 80s with the DARE program. My mom was really scared that they were going to interrogate.
The Reagan, Nancy Reagan specifically.
Yeah, so, they had the DARE police going into schools, and they would literally interrogate children and ask them if their parents were using cannabis. And this was something that frightened my mom to death, because it was my job as a kid to clean the stems and the seeds out of the cannabis. Back when cannabis had stems and seeds. But,
now.
Yeah, exactly. So
some of it would be what do you call it? Shake, where almost a third of it
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so back in the 80s and stuff, like, it was really intense. I mean, we're talking about the mass incarceration movement.
Yeah.
We're talking about millions of Americans being put in prison, and that continued all the way through when I went to prison. So I'm a direct product of that system.
Wow.
And I was at the same prison yard I visited my father at. I went to. So, but anyway, I remember the DARE program coming into my school, and my mom had told me, if they ask you if we're using cannabis, you have to tell them. Well, she didn't use cannabis back then; it was marijuana. She said if they ask you if we're using marijuana or smoking weed, you have to tell them no. So when these cops came in, they had flags and they had guns and everything, and my heart is racing. Yeah. And I thought I was going to be interrogated. I'm in the 4th grade, and they did.
Wow, yeah, that's harsh. And yeah, so still in that. I mean, there's still people in that circle, that kids that live in certain areas in different situations. It's needed probably no more than today. I mean, still needed.
Oh, well, I mean, we definitely haven't won the war on drugs, that's for sure. But yeah, it's a failure, and it's created a lot of suffering. So anyway, they didn't interrogate me, but what they did say is, if you have one drug addict parent, you're 50% more likely to become a drug addict. So you can imagine my childish mind. I'm like, 50 and 50, that's 100. That must be me, and that caused this whole dark cloud of ideology and self-identity to enter into my mind. And I think that's why it was so important for me to write the Sacred Seven. But getting back to this question about how the drum came in my life, So all of this chaos is going on. And then I was invited to this drum circle. And, I hit the drum and it was like I could take control of something. My life, I didn't have any control of. I didn't have control of my mom or the drug addicts that were coming into my house, stealing our food stamps and our TV. But I could have control of the drum. And that really gave me a sense of empowerment. It gave me a sense of community. And now, fast forward, I'm 23 years substance use free. Oh. I'm living an amazing life. Awesome. I'm going back into the institutions that need a voice like mine. When I was young, going through treatment myself, there wasn't anybody that talked about their parents or using with their parents. I mean, in the 80s, that was like a really rare thing. The 90s, it was really rare. But now I go into a room of people and I ask, out of 30 people, how many of you used drugs or alcohol with your parents? And, I'll get 10 hands that are raised up. And that's a direct byproduct of the institutionalization and the incarceration epidemic. I mean, it is a horrible failure. And it's created a generation of people like me that are trying to navigate this very, very challenging world of a culture within our families. And, I'm that one kind of beacon of hope for these people, and they see me and they see my voice, and then they get to drum and they get to experience hitting the drum and taking control of something in their lives. And then I introduce, breathing exercises, visualization, and a lot of little minor wellness interventions inside of that 1 hour facilitation that I'm experiencing with them.
So I was thinking it was more vibration that comes off the drum, but you're talking about you're taking back something you can control, that people from a little first step, it's the first time they're able to actually manage something, correct? Is that what you're talking about there?
Well, this is on a subconscious level. I'm not telling them, you're taking control of your life because you're hitting the drum. But when we're in a circle together and we're drumming, people feel the sense of community. They feel a sense of family. And addiction is the absence of community. It's the absence of family. It is an isolated disease. And when you feel accepted and when you feel connected, it solves the dilemma of substance use. It gives you an opportunity to connect to people. And there's actually biological things that are happening. We're opening up new neural pathways. We're releasing dopamine. We're turning off the neuroreceptors that cause depression faster than the antidepressants. I mean, there's so many wellness experience. I mean, we have tens of thousands of years of evidence-based practice, right? Our communities have been drumming together since the dawn of culture. When the Romans came into Ireland, the first thing they did was bury the singers face down so that their songs would never be heard again. And the systematic eradication of the drum and the song from cultures has been a byproduct of this since the Roman Empire. We've lost our song. And now we have things like, American Idol, which just creates an even more separation from us singing together, dancing together, drumming together. It's a really important part of living a functional life. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, 100%. How do you integrate obviously you got to learn this your program, what you're doing, but how do people integrate into their daily lives the Secret Seven?
Well, I would say that the Sacred Seven is, you could use the Sacred Seven at any time that you need to feel grounded. And if you're going through something, I tell people, go out to the mountains and introduce yourself to the mountain. Call upon your ancestors. Jesus, when he went into the synagogue to teach, There were people that introduced him the way that I introduced myself. But why is that not taught in Sunday school? All over the world, earth-based communities have followed that tradition of ceremonial introduction for tens of thousands of years. But we have gotten away from that idea, and it has caused us so much detriment. And it's important for us to get back to a foundation of self-identity, because if we don't, the government is going to tell us who we are. The institution is going to tell us who we are.
Yeah.
If we don't understand who we are first, you're going to be rocked. And it's so important to answer that question. Now, there might be people out there that'll say, well, I never got along with my dad, or I never got along with my mom. Well, that's your greatest healing, relative.
Yeah.
You know, you think it's easy for me to introduce my mom? She thought being a good mom was taking me out to steal. Do you think it's easy for me to introduce my dad?
True.
My dad turned me onto a clean heroin connection. But I want you to know something. That's my greatest medicine. Now, I don't know what it's like to be forced to go to college when I want to be a musician, but I bet there's somebody out there that needs a reckoning in their relationship with their dad. And you need to understand how to honor your dad and how to honor your mom. And that's one of the 10 commandments, is to do that. But all over the world, people had issues with their family. It's not just us within our contemporary culture. But what's important is that you realize that you came in with that spirituality to live in relationship with that part of yourself. You're never going to escape the DNA of your dad. You're never going to escape the DNA of your mom. This is inherently woven into the fabric of you as an individual. And it's important for us to realize how to integrate that into our lives. Now, there's a system within the Sacred Seven that I say is a modern day revelation. And I take people on a coaching exercise where I'll take you through a one-on-one experience where you will come to understand the inner child. You'll come to understand the feminine aspect of yourself, the masculine aspect of yourself. You'll come to understand who you are as an optimal person in your grandmother. You'll understand how you relate to your family in your paternal grandmother. You'll understand how to relate to your community in your maternal grandfather. You'll understand how to relate to the elements in your paternal grandfather. And I do this work, I've done this with hundreds of people. And as they journey through the Sacred Seven and they begin to optimize their relational spirituality, there's an awakening process that happens. I had a woman that came to me and she said, Andrew, the first time I introduced myself to the ocean in California, there was an earthquake. And we've had people say an eagle flew over at the very moment they called on their ancestors. We've had people say that a hawk landed in front of them when they introduced themselves. It's like the earth calls us back. And when the earth calls us back, she shows us the revelations of what it means to be an optimized earthling. And I get excited talking about this because what this work does is it loosens us from the illusion of captivity. And every single person deserves to find their sovereignty and be a sovereign individual.
How does that come about? How do you I mean, obviously, there's things that you teach that people need to learn. So there's obviously, but real overview, broad brush. You're talking about some things that people have no idea how to do. I mean, the concept, obviously, yeah. Oh, I get this, and it's fascinating because that's another deeper level of becoming part of the earth, or becoming actually a living being that is united with the earth, which is we talk about a lot. That's a big important deal in all sorts of things, including dissolving mental health and sicknesses, because we have the trillions of cells in our body. It's like trees can actually heal each other. It's all part of that. And it's fascinating. I did want, before I do this, Kathy's got a great question here. I want to go back to Dixon, and we're kind of, I think, getting a little bit off here. Maybe not, because they're talking about musical therapy, and versus we're talking about getting back to your inner child as these activities. Is there any connection with vibration as well, for coming from sounds like the dong and things like that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of research on frequency. And what my research has been on is how consciousness relates to sound. So there's a big difference between the way that many individuals look at their relationship to sound medicine within the scientific community. And there's some valid research that's being done in this area. But what has been absent is the idea of collective consciousness and how I, as a facilitator of sound medicine, can utilize the wave frequency of sound to create energetic manifestation and displacement. So we know that energy exists in two forms, density and flow. There is emotional density. Within emotional density is potential. So I don't say that anything is a bad vibe. I don't say, oh, that person is giving off bad energy.
Right.
Because I understand that there is density, and density creates gravity. So when you get around a person that, quote unquote, is negative, you feel.
That's an interesting twist. Sorry, keep going, but just
Well, so yeah, exactly. So this is making sense because this is actual truth I'm sharing with you. This isn't convoluted scientific jargon. This is real truth. And when you have that awakening moment, you understand, like, this is speaking to you in your heart, revelatory. So let's imagine, like, back to this idea of density. So collectively within the agreement of a hospital, we have an agreement of sickness. Everyone in that hospital, from the staff to the patients, have agreed that this entity that is the hospital is comprised of an area where people are sick. So me, as an energetic alchemist, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that density of agreement and unlock that potential through the gong, the Native American flute, the drum, the chimes, the singing bowl. And I'm going to give that density permission to flow into a new architecture. And that architecture is love and gratitude. Love and gratitude are the collective consciousness containers that everything in the universe will agree to be in relationship with. You see, love and gratitude is a frequency that will speak to you on a cellular level. It will speak to you on a powerful, conscious, spiritual level. Now, I can use vibration to manifest a lot of different frequencies, but not everything in this world will agree to receive that frequency unless it's truly of love and gratitude. Now, a love and gratitude is a frequency that everything receives. And that's why I use the love and gratitude conscious connection to the sound in order to create a displacement of hate, sickness, all those different things. We have people that come into our drum circles. There was a woman, and I have a video testimony of a woman that had not felt her legs in years have a sensation that came up her legs. I had a woman that was in one of the drum circles that had neck pain since COVID. While she was sitting there and I was playing the gong and the flute, her neck cracked. Her neck cracked back into place. And she was alleviated of the pain. These are, I mean, I can go on and on and on. I have people, nurses, come over and they'll say, oh, she won't play. He won't play. And they'll take the drum away from Bob. And I'll be like, no, let's set the drum next to Bob and see if Bob will play. Next thing you know, you see the energy of the earth. They start tapping their toe. And then before you know it, they're playing on the drum. I'm talking about people that are in a nonverbal state they call locked, in a psychiatric lockdown that's associated with memory care. I'm talking about the most dense experience with dementia you can imagine. And these individuals will start singing, drumming, and even dancing together. And it baffles the nurses. I've literally had nurses over there crying because they haven't seen a human experience in this person in years.
Yeah.
And it's miraculous. And we need to increase the volume of research that quantifies this so that our government and these institutions of healthcare will stop focusing primarily on pharmaceuticals, and they will start creating opportunity to say to a person, hey, I'm going to prescribe you a drum circle once a week. I'm going to prescribe you a walk through nature once a week. I'm going to prescribe you to go and sit and breathe for an hour. I'm going to prescribe you to take your shoes off and stand on the grass for an hour. Because these systems are much more inexpensive than the system that we currently have as healthcare. And there was a time in our collective ancestral history when you would go to the medical practitioner and they didn't take your blood, your poo, or your pee. They would say to you, when was the last time you drummed? When was the last time you sang a song? When was the last time you danced? And that quantified a healthy individual. You see, now we get into doing all kinds of stuff within the body that we really don't even know what's going on. 3 out of 10 people are healed with a sugar pill. And we don't know why.
Right.
We don't know why medicine is 30% of medicine is the effectiveness of our relationship to that medicine. And do you know what? It goes up to 60 and 70% with a sugar pill when we talk about antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and even anti-schizophrenic medicines. So why is it that we're vesting so much of our resources, our hard-earned resources, into the pharmaceutical solution solely? There are literally grants out there that you have to focus on a double-blind study in order to have the grant. I'm saying, hey, why don't we invest a little bit of money into researching drumming? Why don't we research the energy of the earth? Why don't we research some of these powerful tools that have tens of thousands of years of evidence-based practice and can be shown? I can take a doctor into a hospital today and show you a miracle through the drum circle. I've had them cry. The doctors cry because they see stuff that baffles them. You know, and it's just, it needs to happen, man. You know, I got family members.
You know how hard that is to, you mentioned the thing that we also talk a lot about. I mean, this new administration, however you like it or don't like it, but there's a lot of things coming out that aren't operating right. Not even close. That the government does. And what you talked about is part of the corruption of life. You have the pharma and you have the agra. The agra companies feed you all this junk that we take, dyes that cause cancer and all these different things. And then we take that and now the pharma is going to cure it with a pill of some sort. And like you said, we don't know what's going on with all this stuff inside, but that's a hard, and that's why this show, and I'm glad we're talking, because you said it's got to get out there. It's got to get, but that's a massive, because you're not because it's so massive, but because you're going up this, these people line their pockets with their drug trials and all that stuff. And I agree. I could not agree more. This has to change. It has to, for human nature to evolve. We really do have to get back to the foundation. And I'll add one more little twist in there. Now that AI's coming, everything's happening faster. So if we aren't in control of our elements, if we aren't in control of our lives, it's going to probably be crashing in ugly, man. What's been your biggest challenge in your mission so far?
I think that there's been a lot of opportunity for me to celebrate the embrace of what my mission and my work has been, because I'll share with you that when I go into a hospital and the people see what I can do with the drum, they just celebrate it. They celebrate it. And it's just a so powerful experience to witness people actually celebrating the beauty of the power of creating a container of health. And one of the greatest
container of health. I love that container of health. That's a good visual. I love that.
Yeah, and it's all about culture. It's all about relationship. It's all about creating opportunity for people to be elevated to their optimal state. And when a person is in a wheelchair and they're an amputee, right? I'm not trying to go in there to change them. I'm going in there to give them an opportunity to be a part of something. I'm not going in with the idea that they're not perfect and whole just the way they are. I'm going in there with that in my heart. I remember I was at the VA and the recreation therapist said, we're going to bring somebody down to participate in the drum circle, but we just want them to listen. And I said, that'd be great. This was a young man who had just got back. This was during Afghanistan and Iraq, and he had just gotten back from Iraq, and he had lost all of his limbs, arms and legs. And this young man was in a bed, and on the bed was kind of a bar that went across the bed, and it had a chain. And I went over to him and I said, hey, if I can put the drum on this chain, would you play? And he said, yeah, I'd love to play. So I put the stick in his mouth. I cleaned off the stick, put it in his mouth, and he was playing the drum. And see, this idea of creating a safe container where everyone can contribute to each other is the difference between the therapeutic model and the peer support model. See, if there was a barrier that I feel, and actually I think that we're contributing to the conversation right now in healthcare, because there's a movement around peer support specialists. And I happen to be a peer support specialist. So I can go into a drum circle and I can say to a group of people that are living in an isolated existence in a hospital, I can say to them, you know what? I was feeling really lonely before I got here. I was feeling a heaviness and a worry in my heart. And now I feel so much better. And everybody applauds because I'm telling them that they've contributed to my life.
Absolutely.
You see, a therapist can't do that. A therapist can't go in and talk about the way that they feel because now they've crossed a line in therapy.
Right.
But I can give to that group an opportunity to feel like they've contributed to my life and to the lives of the other people in the hospital. I'm going to share with you a quick story, and I hope that this inspires somebody out there because there's people listening to this program right now that are wondering how they can be a part of community and how they can contribute to the world. So we went to this hospital, me and my beloved, for 10 years. And this hospital is a psychiatric lockdown and a skilled nursing. So this is long-term care. So we're in this hospital, and for every month for 10 years, a man would come out. And folks, he wasn't in a wheelchair. He was in a bed. And this man probably weighed 95 pounds. I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
And his hands were so atrophied that I had to pry his fingers open to put a maraca in his hand. He couldn't even play the drum because he couldn't put his hand down. But he would shake the maraca and say, hallelujah, hallelujah. And he had a great big smile on his face. So one day I come and I set up the drums. And I said, where's my buddy Vance? This man's name is Vance Gribbins. And they said, well, he went home to heaven. I said, well, good for him. I said, I've been coming to this hospital for 10 years. I said, how long did he live here? And they told me he lived in that hospital for 28 years.
That's a story. I put this, I'm sorry, go ahead and finish your story. Go ahead, sorry.
And you know what? He never stopped coming out to participate. He always made a dedicated response. When the activity people would come over and say, hey, let's play bingo, you know what? He would come out. And we live in a world where we have people that are isolating in their houses, that aren't coming out and having picnics, They're not coming out and playing bingo. They're not coming out and playing crossword puzzle. They're not doing anything to socialize. They're stuck on their phones and watching the news. And we got to stop and get back to community. We got to go out to the park, throw the frisbee around. We got to go for a walk. Say hi to each other. Don't just look down at your phone when you're in line because you feel uncomfortable. My grandmother could talk to anybody.
That's one of our biggest things is we open or close the show every day by go out and say hi to somebody. If you don't know them, give them a wave. That whole thing is I could not agree with you more. Absolutely not.
Get to know your neighbors, man. Get to know your neighbors. Go get a drum and invite people over to your house and play music with them. I'll teach you. We do a training twice a year. I'll teach you how to build community. Listen, people in North America, Africans, Native Americans, Europeans, have gathered together to create music since the dawn of this country.
Absolutely.
We've always had music. We've always sat on our porch and sang songs together. We've always picked around on a guitar or played a drum or a washboard or something. And we got to get back to that. You know what? Leave all the political BS behind. Get to the root of community. You know, people used to say we don't talk about religion and politics around it. The other day I'm in line at the grocery store, and this guy is spewing on the clerk, all kinds of political stuff. And I looked over at the guy and I said, do you see how this clerk is posturing right here? He doesn't want to listen to you. Why are you spewing your political jargon onto this poor clerk? He doesn't want to listen. Look at him. He's uncomfortable. And the guy looked at me like he had seen a deer in headlights. But the reality is that all this division that's going on is just creating sickness. And we got to get back to the fundamentals of community if we're going to solve the issues that are at hand. And there's a lot going on. I understand we need to end the corruption in our government. Everybody knows that. We got to address Citizens United. We got to address the reality that we have people that work for the government and leave and go work in private industry. Other countries don't allow that. Why is it that we can let somebody go work at the FDA for 5-10 years, work on committees to pass legislation to get freaking dyes approved, literally food dyes that are illegal in every country around the world except the United States, and then go work for Pepsi or General Mills or whoever? That's BS. We got to end that. Yeah. And the reality is, yes, we do need change, but we're not all going to be able to change if we don't quit calling each other names. And we got to have a common area of connection.
That's an excellent point there, because I've always talked about, or you talk about, that term divide and conquer, right? So you're talking about, and it just fell off the cliff with the COVID when they locked everybody down and did all that. But prior to that, everything they could do, you create friction between races and communities by stories, and these things start building. And once they do, the people in control have a much easier way to manage the population. Their citizens are they're workers. Right? These are horrible people, and they know how to make this happen. We talked about it, governments for thousands of years. That is such a key point that you're talking about right now. It's so critical to know that there is a actionable and a consistent attempt, certainly by governments all over the world, to keep the masses divided, because when you come together, you become a force. We talk about that all the time. The great American middle class, and by extension, the world, pulling together, all of a sudden a lot of shit changes, a lot of things, because if we have that voice that's united, like what you're talking about, get to know, and that's why we always drive so much to have people, know your neighbors, that we don't even know our neighbors at all. And then you extend. I say hi to, I have a goal. I want to tell you a story after your next conversation, but I started saying hi to people, and like you said, I don't look down at that's a really horrible thing, people try, but what's happening is people are actually starting to catch people's eye. They're not afraid of having their eye caught. So there is a little shift here, but my God, I could not agree with you more. What about trauma in affecting communities? Like, does that have an effect in that community? I like what you were talking about. You can create a community. So there's all sorts of things that dive off here. I mean, it dive off into here. And, I just wanted to bring that point up. And then, what does trauma do?
Yeah, so trauma is, in an energetic sense, a fortified form of emotional density. So what happens with trauma is we have this experience, and then that experience becomes a dense relationship inside of our field consciously. So then we begin to relate things as if that is a part of the trauma-based experience. So, for instance, myself, growing up in the environment I grew up in, I had severe post-traumatic stress as a child, so bad that I went to the bathroom on myself. I mean, I was living in a war zone, as a kid. There were, violence around me constantly. I watched the police beat my mom up in front of me when I was a kid. No-knock warrants. Just all kinds of stuff. I was left at a drug house. I was sexually abused. I was abandoned, multiple times at parks by my parents. I mean, all of the sickness that you can imagine around substance use disorder. Then, home insecurity. So I'm bounced auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa. 1 year I was in 4 different schools. There was very little stability in my life. And as a product of that, I have this relationship to post-traumatic stress. So what I want to share with everyone is the idea of relational spirituality. How you can take something as dense as trauma and live with it in a relational way. Now, what does that mean? That means that I need to fortify a boundary. I need to fortify a communication system, and I need to be able to live in functional relationship with this part of myself. So trauma, as it shows up in the body, is a very important part of navigating living a successful life. Every single person in this world is going to have some form of trauma. Just you being a spiritual being, energetic being, and being forced into a body is a level of trauma. But what's important is that we realize that there are tools that have been utilized for tens of thousands of years to help us live in relationship with that. The breath is a good one. Drumming, singing, dancing, prayer. I couldn't close my eyes in a group of people for years. I was so afraid. But through practice, I've been able to close my eyes. And when you're a facilitator of mindfulness and sacred space and drum circle and wellness, it's important for you to be trauma informed. Even if you're going out and you're teaching a Zumba class, what are the layers of trauma informed understanding that you have? Are our teachers teaching with a trauma informed understanding? Is our clergy, our chaplains? Yeah. What are we doing to understand how to create a level of trauma informed approach to relationship? And when we do that, we will live in successful relationship with our trauma. I'm able to live in successful relationship with my trauma. I have a lot of issues that I manage today effectively. I've been able to manage my lifestyle substance use free for 23 years now. And that's because of the tools that I have gathered through my recovery. And so, yes, is trauma important to understand? It is very important, especially in this age that we live in now. When we come up to a person and we meet a person who's from, we ask them, hey, are you a veteran? And sometimes innately we'll have this feeling of saying, well, thank you for your service. And there's veterans out there that did things that they don't want to be acknowledged for. There's people that did things And the idea of you coming to them with a good motivation can sometimes trigger them. I just heard a man talk about his relationship to kicking in doors in Iraq and how hard it is every time somebody tells him you did what you had to do. Like he just says that sets him off into a spiral with his trauma every time he hears that. And we need to be sensitive to meeting people at their point of need. And if we don't know how to, shut your mouth. Like, here's the thing: people come up to each other and they do this sort of stuff. Like somebody loses their kid. My beloved, she lost her kid, and she's gone through a horrible experience. She lost her child to a drunk driver, and there are people that would come up to her and say, I understand what you're going through. I just lost my dog. And the thing is that, do you really want to create a value system that's associated with you losing your dog and someone losing their child? This is how ignorant we are of emotional intelligence. Now, she's gone to a place in her own healing where she can relate to that now. But in the beginning of the loss of her child, that set her off into a whole spiral. So we can, I can say to people, well, who's your favorite basketball player? They'll rattle off somebody. Who's your favorite, baseball player? They'll rattle off somebody. Who's your favorite MMA fighter? They'll tell you. Your favorite actor. The list goes on and on. But if I ask you, well, who's your favorite communication expert? Most people look at me with blind eyes. Because even though communication is the most important part of relationships, most people don't study communication. They don't know how to relate to people. They don't know how to talk to people. They haven't even watched a YouTube video. And we're talking about a world that we live in, right now. Yeah. And this world, information is so accessible to us. I fixed my washer the other day by watching a YouTube video. If you grew up in an environment like me, and you're listening right now, you don't have any excuse not to study mental health, because you can turn on YouTube when you get off this amazing podcast, this interview, and you can go study how to relate to people through functional communication. I have a teaching that I call sacred communication. And during my coaching that I do around the Sacred Seven, I teach people a very powerful form of communication that honors the feminine, the masculine, and the child. It's a cognitive process. It really helps people understand how to get their needs met and how to listen to people on a deep level. It's important for us as we relate to trauma. And not every, I'm not saying that there's a perfect way to do it either. You're going to mess up, but be able to own your mess ups and understand that you're trying to do your best. Love says you're doing your best. And when you relate to people, sometimes you can just say to them, you know what? I'm here for you. I want you to know I have your back. I'm going to be here. And if you need someone to talk to about that, I'm here to listen. I might not have the best answers, but you know what? I'm here to listen. And that's a great start for somebody.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That ability is critical. The ability, let's say, read your audience, that ability to be able to literally think about what is my best reaction to this situation, to my loved one or whatever here. And you're right, we don't do that. First thing we do is think about ourselves. What did we experience, and try and I'm going to say shove that down their throat, so to speak. But it's a critical skill to have, and it's part of that building a vibe, because you come in. We just did a thing about funerals, and people who and this lady, her name's Barbara, did a has some discussion about pain and trauma and different things, including how to talk to somebody when you're at a funeral. I mean, that's the extreme, obviously, but there's so much about being there for them and not using that to be there to repeat your own stories again. What do you think is the first step for somebody who wants to go through the healing journey?
Oh, that's a great question. So, One of the things that's important to understand about healing, right, is that it's a relational part of ourselves. Sorry, my battery here. I'm gonna have to do this real quick here. There we go. That's better.
An earthquake.
Yeah, it is. Woo, we got turned around. So what I like to share about healing. One time I was in a drum circle, and I used to hit the drum and send through the drum the vibration of healing. And there was a woman that had a tracheotomy in her throat and two caregivers next to her, and she was in a wheelchair. And I hit the drum and I sent healing to her, and immediately I hear her voice in my mind say, "Who are you to tell me I need healing? I'm healing the people who are next to me." And that was my judgment about this woman, right?
Yeah.
Is that because she was in an institution, she was sick. And I think so often people look at the process of the human condition and they immediately tell themselves that they need healing from something like grief. Okay, grief is a cycle of relationship that you are going to go through your entire life. There is a process inside of that. I shared with you all something about my parents, but there's times when I miss my parents, and I live in relationship with that part of myself. I'm not trying to heal the grief. What I'm doing is I'm living in functional relationship with that part of me. And then guess what? I don't have to get over it. Because there's lots of people out there in our community that when they feel something in relationship to grief, they tell themselves, "Oh, I'm supposed to be over this," or "I've healed this already." And then what do? They end up shaming themselves.
Yeah.
And they end up putting guilt on themselves. Instead of saying, "You know what? I'm living in relationship with this part of me." And that can be in relationship to cancer. That can be in relationship to schizophrenia. That can be in relationship to every aspect of the human condition.
That's an interesting dichotomy. This with the schizophrenia element. Go on. And by the way, are you okay on time? We've got like 3 more questions, and I know we're getting close to where
I got to get going here pretty soon because okay. I really got to get to work on my travel trailer. We're getting ready to go to Sedona for a training I do once a year in Sedona. So I'm busy.
Oh my God. Yeah, big time. Yeah. So if you don't mind, can we just kind of bump through these really quick, and then,
sure.
And then I'll throw you into the green room and then, so to speak, and then we'll wrap up the thing here.
Well, let me just ask you this. Does that feel pretty good to say, like, I can have a relationship to my cancer?
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to come into, because it makes a lot of sense depending on the amount of emotional intelligence you have, because you have to have a relationship with things good, bad, or indifferent. Otherwise, you don't get the most out of the benefit, whatever's there, unless you have a relationship with it. It's the old saying, guys, used to not go to the hospital because, they didn't want to hear about the cancer that they probably have, kind of thing, right? Well, you got to have a relationship with that.
I love the idea of what you said is a truth, because you have a relationship with it, whether you acknowledge that relationship or not. So why not live in functional relationship with that part of yourself? And in doing so, you can create a boundary, you can create an intimacy, you can create a way of dialogue in your mind. You can utilize that energy in a way that serves you. So I love to say that we're on a journey of recovery. We're navigating this human condition effectively, and we're practicing living our optimal life. Now, inside of that, there's a lot less pressure to heal something.
Wow. Now this next question is very interesting because it makes a lot of sense. We talked about different people. What about different age groups? If you look at different age groups, Bradley Pomp, thank you very much. Awesome question, I think. I have seen different age groups respond differently to your methods. I would say probably yes, right?
For sure. I mean, every part of the human condition is a lot, age has wisdom, but age doesn't, maturity comes with responsibility. So we have a lot of really mature children out there that have taken responsibility for themselves, and we have a lot of old fools.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So true. That's an awesome answer. What's a powerful success story that continues to motivate you today?
Well, I think that my relation.
Hold on a second. I think you said that actually already before. You've had a number of things that have to motivate you, the skill sets. But what do you think there?
Well, number one is my relationship with my daughter. That my daughter, me breaking the cycle of addiction has created an opportunity for my daughter to live substance use free. My daughter's 30 years old. She's already bought and sold a house, bought another house. She's traveled the entire United States. She's working her career. We have just amazing conversations. When me and my daughter get on the phone, it's an amazing experience for me. And, she tells me things like, Dad, I was at a training and I looked around and there was all these men in the room, and the instructor asked, would anyone like to get up and share about a topic that they don't know all the information about, and they're going to be asked questions that they can't answer. And nobody raised their hands. And my daughter said, I'm going to try this. And she got up there and she utilized the tools that we practice in communication, and she was effectively able to navigate that experience. Wow. And because of that, the department she works in said, we could see you as a PR person. We could see you being a voice for our entire organization. And that for me is the deepest level of success. When you're thinking about the next 7 generations rather than just yourself, that's really a mindset that is about true success in my mind.
Absolutely. My goodness. That's an awesome story. And it just, that connection, in family, I have an experience in that realm too, and it's awesome. It's that it changes your whole life. What are some of the simple ways people can use music for their well-being, mental well-being? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you're going through something, turn on some music and sing a song.
Yeah.
It'll change your whole chemistry. If you want to get involved in drum circles, go to social media, search drum circle in my community. There are drum circles all over the United States. There's some that have been around for literally hundreds of years. And it's important for people to understand that there are individuals that look at music as recreation, community building, and fun. And it's not always about being perfect. It's not always about even having perfect pitch or anything like that. It's about community.
Yeah. That's the most critical thing. And let's face it, getting back down to earth, right? Getting back to the basics. That is what we're built to do. That's kind of, we're a social community. We're human beings. All right, my friend. Any final thoughts? I wanted to throw out a story, but we'll do a second, or we'll do a follow-up. Can you do 2 things for me? Can you, on the private chat there, can you put your contact information? Run through it now, but can you type that in there? I'll copy it from the private chat and put it in the comments, because what happens, as you can imagine, we had a great bunch of people on there who loved it, but a month from now, by then there'll be another couple of hundred, I don't know, 1,000 views or whatever, and that somebody's going to ask me about something, and I'm going to go, Andrew's the expert there, and then I can pass them straight through to you.
Great. I put my websites.
There it is.
And my email in there. And if anybody wants a free copy of my book, they can go to thesacred7.com and get a free copy of my book. Once they get that free copy, I'll send you an email and you can purchase a signed copy. And if you purchase a signed copy of my book, I send one into the Arizona Department of Corrections. I just sent a bunch of books in there, and I work a lot in the Native community, and one of the young men I was working with, he said, he called me up collect, and he's like, "Uncle, I got your book, but the last chapter's ripped out." And I was like, "Really?" And so that felt really good because somebody ripped out the last chapter and sent it home.
Wow. Wow. Oh man, I didn't even make that connection. That's freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
really good. Felt really good.
Any final thoughts as you give your wave goodbye?
No, I just say, we're in a time in which we need to pray for our country, pray for each other, pray for our families, and just really rest into the presence of, the great mystery, the higher power. If that's Jesus for you, or Allah, or Buddha, or whatever it is, know that love says you're doing your best, and know that there's beauty above, beauty below, beauty beside, beauty in front, beauty behind, beauty within, that I am made beautiful again. And just walk in beauty, relatives. Wherever you go, try to do your best.
Awesome, dude, man. Wave goodbye to your new fans here, buddy. You have a good one. Thank you so much. We'll keep this thing going, right?
All right, great. Let me know.
You got it, brother. Thanks. All right. So as promised, that was fantastic. I've got this whole lighting thing that's really bugging the I'm going to say shit out of me. And there's only 2 people on. So yeah, see, there's this whole shadow thing that for some reason has changed on me. Anyway, so that was awesome. I mean, the ability to view that mental health struggle, that those needs that people have is fascinating. To be able to have the ability to I'm going to put one of these new ones on there. To have the ability to have that connection, that input. I firmly believe, and before I started doing this show, well, producer Barbie really has done a lot of work on it with herself, but she also has been a big influence in that direction, that path for me. Tomorrow's the point. Tomorrow we have a discussion, but the lady, she lives in Hawaii. I can't wait. I used to live there. That's awesome. But she has an amazing message, and along this way, but kind of side to it. So we're kind of developing this series. Not purposely, it's just falling into play that way, and I absolutely love it. With that, I am Rod Duff, and this is Insights and Straight Talk, and we're here every day alongside producer Barbie. And with that, I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here, and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.